Hey everybody, my name's Brittany. I started studying the Bible in April of 2017, and when I first started, I knew nothing about it. It was a lot of information, it was overwhelming, sometimes stressful, so I wanted to make a Bible for Beginners Bible study. Last episode, we did 2 Samuel, so today we're going to start 1 Kings, and it comes right after 2 Samuel, and it's in chronological order. So this begins with a very old King David. Now, King David, as we had said before, had lots of sons. His second oldest had just appointed himself king. His name was Adonijah. When in fact, David was going to appoint Solomon as king. So Solomon kind of proves himself. He gets revenge on all the people that did his dad wrong, and Adonijah kind of stepped down after that. So when Solomon became king, God offered him anything he wanted. He could have had fame, fortune, women, like anything, right? But Solomon chose wisdom. Wisdom is a lot more than just being smart. In the Bible, the word for wisdom, the Hebrew word translated is it's so much more than just being smart and knowing. It's really great to study that, what all it encompasses. But he asked for wisdom to govern the land properly. And because he was humble in his request, he asked for something that would help him help other people. It was not a selfish request, when he very well could have. God also granted him health and wealth and fame and fortune and all of that. Okay, so this is one of my favorite stories in the Bible, even though it's a little weird. All right, it's in chapter 3 of 1 Kings, and it shows off Solomon's wisdom. So there are two women who are sleeping in the same house. Both of them have recently had a baby. Both of them fall asleep with their baby. One of them rolls over on their baby and kills their baby. Something that happens even still today, right? Well, both of them were claiming that the live baby was theirs and that the dead baby was the other woman's. So Solomon was like, okay, well, y'all can't decide, so let's cut the baby in half. Of course, one woman's like screaming, crying, no, just give the baby to her, but let it be safe, let it live. And the other woman's just kind of like, okay, cut the baby in half. Well, we all know who the real mom was, right? The one that wanted the baby to be safe no matter what. So he gave the baby to that woman. And I love that story, and my kids think it's so funny because they have a Superbook movie about it. And every time they're just like, that is so messed up. But I've loved that story. I always have. Okay, so let's keep it. That was in chapter 3. So chapter 6, Solomon starts on the Lord's temple. Now, if you remember, David was talking about it, and he kind of laid out a little bit of blueprint for it. Well, Solomon is the one that gets to actually build it. Let's see. Historians believe Solomon reigned from 970 to 931 BC. So the temple building started around 966 BC. And that, dating that, working backwards, helps us see that the Israelites came out of Egypt around 1446 BC. Solomon spent 7 years building the temple and 13 years building his palace. He's portrayed as such a humble person. It kind of was weird to me that he spent almost twice as long in his own palace as he did the Lord's temple, right? But then they moved the Ark of the Covenant in, right? And from the city of David to Solomon's temple. So, like I said, Solomon was also granted by God to be um, famous, wealthy, wise, all of that. But he also had a problem, just like everybody. And his problem was women. And a lot of women. He was married to 700 women and had 300 concubines. Concubines, kind of like your side woman that you're not married to, but friends with benefits kind of thing, who were foreign. And God had told him not to marry them because he was afraid that Solomon would start worshiping the foreign gods and idols, which they did, and he did. And so, and so because Solomon didn't listen, God took away most of Israel from Solomon's son Rehoboam, and only left him with one tribe named Judah. Alright, so Solomon passed away, and so did his son after building idols and worshiping things he wasn't supposed to do. So now this leaves Israel and it's split. Okay, so we have Judah, who are from David's family line, and Israel, who got torn away from David's family line because of Solomon. Then there are a ton of kings on both sides, so it's like they've split. Now each of them have their own kings, and there's just a ton, and none of them are great. They just keep sinning. And then we get to Elijah, who I had heard a lot about, but never actually studied him or read about him until I was studying for this video at chapter 17. So Elijah was an amazing prophet. He even could stop the rain, by just asking God, so that people could see their wrongdoings. Let me see what I'll write down. It's just so much about Elijah, right? Okay, so there is one story where God sends him into a part of the land that doesn't really like Christians, and he sent him to stay with a poor woman and her child. And he was asking for food, and obviously they're very poor. They didn't have food, and but she took him in anyway and shared what she had. And at one point, her child died, and she's like, "Well, is this the payback I get for allowing Elijah into my home?" But then God brought the child back to life, and after Elijah begged for his soul back, there were another story about Elijah. It gets confusing. I'm trying to slow down. There was Ahab and Jezebel who ruled Judah and were killing all of God's prophets. Well, Elijah escaped that, obviously, and challenged them. And so Ahab and Jezebel, they were worshipers of Baal, and so were all of their people. So they challenged all of the worshipers of Baal, and it was challenged forever. So what happened was there's hundreds of worshipers of Baal standing around, and Elijah's challenge was whoever could light this pile of dry wood on fire without touching it, just by their God lighting it on fire, would prove who the real God was. Well, for hours, these people, these worshipers of Baal, prayed and begged and for their God to light their dry pile of wood on fire, while Elijah mocked them. It's wonderful. It's something about, I can't remember the exact line, but something about, well, maybe you should pray louder. Maybe he's on the toilet. And he's got such an attitude. It's hilarious. I love that part. But of course, Elijah's pile lights on fire instantly, and thousands of people are converted to Christianity in that very moment. So Elijah goes on, and then we run into Elisha, and he will become Elijah's protege. And we'll talk more about that next week. Week 32, we're going to do Kings, 2 Kings. And we'll talk more about Elijah, Elisha, and some more of the kings from Judah and Israel. All right, y'all have a great week, and God bless.